My daughter-in-law slapped me in the face and demanded my house keys. That moment still feels unreal. I had just walked into my own kitchen to make a cup of tea when she stood there, red-faced, eyes blazing with anger. Before I could even ask what was wrong, her hand came flying across my cheek. The sound of it echoed in the room, and the sting burned like fire. Then she screamed, "Give me the keys, now. This house isn't yours anymore, it's mine." I froze. My legs trembled, and for a second, I thought maybe I was dreaming. But no, it was all too real. She was serious. Her arm was stretched out, waiting for the keys that had hung on my ring for over 30 years. My mind spun in cycles, and all I could think was, how did we get here? That slap wasn't just about anger, it was about something much deeper. But to explain how I ended up in that shocking moment, I need to take you back to where everything began. Because it didn't start with hate. No, it started with kindness that I gave freely, maybe too freely. I am Linda, a 62-year-old widow living in Ohio. My husband, Richard, passed away 7 years ago. We built our home together, our little blue house with white shutters and a porch swing he made with his own hands. After his passing, that house became my comfort, my last piece of him. I told myself I would never leave it. My son, Michael, was always my pride and joy. Smart, hardworking, and with a heart much like his father's. He had just turned 30 when he introduced me to Jessica, the woman who would later become my daughter-in-law. At first, I welcomed her with open arms. I was so glad to see him happy, smiling again after years of quiet loneliness following his dad's death. Jessica seemed sweet at first, polite, always smiling, always offering to help in the kitchen. I thought maybe, just maybe, she would become the daughter I never had. I cooked her favorite meals, bought her little gifts, and even told her family stories, hoping she would feel part of us. But slowly, little cracks began to show. I remember the first time I noticed something off. One evening, we were having dinner at my house, and I asked Jessica if she could pass the salt. She looked at me, rolled her eyes, and muttered under her breath, "Why don't you just get it yourself?" I laughed it off, thinking maybe she was just tired. But the way she said it, sharp and cold, stuck with me. Still, I brushed it aside. Life teaches you that people have bad days, and kindness is the best answer. That's what Richard always told me. So I kept giving. When they struggled financially, I offered to help pay part of their rent. When Jessica lost her job, I invited them to move in with me just until things got better. That's when everything started to change. At first, it was fine. They stayed in the guest room, and I felt joy in having my son close again. But soon, Jessica started taking over the house. She moved my decorations around, replaced my curtains, and even criticized the meals I cooked. Too much salt, too bland, too old-fashioned. Her words cut deeper than she realized. But I swallowed my pride. I thought maybe if I stayed patient, she would see how much I cared. I even told myself that this was what family was about, adjusting, compromising, helping each other. The problem was, she didn't see it that way. One afternoon, I walked into the living room and found her sitting on my couch with her laptop. She didn't notice me at first, and I overheard her on a call with someone. "Yeah, we'll be fine. This house will be ours soon. Don't worry about it." I felt a chill run down my spine. Our house. My house. I wanted to ask her what she meant, but I didn't. Maybe I was too afraid of the answer. Instead, I went back to the kitchen, sat down at the table, and prayed silently. I prayed for patience, for wisdom, for some way to handle this without breaking my family apart. The days turned into weeks, and tension filled the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Michael didn't see it, or maybe he didn't want to. Whenever I mentioned something Jessica did, he brushed it off. "Mom, you're overthinking. She loves you. She's just adjusting." Adjusting. That word haunted me. Because it didn't feel like adjusting. It felt like erasing. Erasing me, erasing Richard, erasing everything I had built. And then came the day it all exploded. It was a Saturday morning. I had just finished watering the flowers in the garden when I came inside to make tea. I walked into the kitchen, and there she was, Jessica, standing with her hands on her hips, her eyes like fire. "Linda," she said coldly, "we need to talk." I set the kettle down, confused. "What about?" She took a step closer. "The house. You need to hand over the keys." I laughed nervously, thinking she was joking. "The keys? Sweetheart, this is my house. Why would you need my keys?" That's when it happened. Without warning, she slapped me across the face. The sound rang out like thunder, and my cheek burned. My hand flew to my face, my heart racing, my breath caught in my throat. "Give me the keys," she demanded, her voice shaking with anger. "You don't belong here anymore. This is mine now." And just as she reached out her hand, waiting for me to drop the keys into her palm, the front door creaked open. The sound of the front door opening cut through the tense silence like a knife. My cheek was still burning from the slap, and Jessica's hand was stretched out, demanding the keys as if they were already hers. But when that door opened, her head snapped around, and for the first time since I had known her, I saw something flicker across her face. Fear. It was Michael. My son stepped into the house, carrying a bag of groceries. His eyes darted from me holding my face, to Jessica standing in the kitchen with her hand still raised, and then to the tension that hung so heavy in the air you could almost see it. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice sharp but confused. I wanted to speak. I wanted to tell him everything, that his wife had just slapped me, that she had demanded my house keys, that something far darker was happening beneath the surface. But when I opened my mouth, no words came out. My throat tightened, and my heart pounded in my ears. Jessica was quicker. She dropped her hand and rushed to him, her face twisting into a look of pain that wasn't real. "Michael," she cried, "your mom. She's accusing me of trying to take the house from her. She's so paranoid." I tried to calm her down, but she lashed out at me. The audacity of her words almost knocked the breath out of me. My hands trembled. I wanted to scream, to fight back, but I just stood there, stunned, as she clung to my son like a helpless child. Michael set the groceries down and looked at me, his brow furrowing. "Mom, what's going on? Did you really?" "No." I finally found my voice, though it cracked with emotion. "Michael, she slapped me. She demanded my house keys. She said this house is hers." Jessica gasped dramatically, covering her mouth. "That's not true. I would never slap your mother. She must be confused. Maybe she's not feeling well." That stung worse than the slap. Not only was she lying, but she was trying to make me seem weak, unstable, maybe even crazy. And the worst part, I saw doubt flicker in my son's eyes. I couldn't bear it. I turned away, walked toward the porch, and sat down on the swing Richard had built for me. My chest rose and fell in heavy breaths as I tried to steady myself. How had things gotten so twisted? Michael followed me outside, leaving Jessica inside to simmer. He sat beside me, his face pale and worried. "Mom, are you okay? Did she really?" I looked at him, my son, my boy I had raised with every ounce of love I had. "Michael, I would never lie to you. She slapped me. She wanted the keys. I don't know why she's acting this way, but it's happening. Please believe me." He rubbed his temples, torn between the two women he cared about. I don't understand. Why would she do that? It doesn't make sense." I placed my hand over his. "Sometimes, Michael, people aren't who they seem. You think you know someone, but when pressure comes, their true colors show. I've tried to be kind to her, but kindness doesn't mean letting someone take advantage of you." He nodded slowly, but I could see the battle raging inside him. Love for his wife, loyalty to his mother. He didn't know which way to turn. Inside, Jessica must have realized we were talking, because the sound of cabinets slamming echoed through the house. She was angry, but she was also calculating. I knew this wasn't over. For a few days after that, things calmed down, at least on the surface. Jessica avoided me, barely spoke to me, and when she did, her words were laced with venom disguised as politeness. "Do you want me to cook something simple for you, Linda? You might not be able to handle much salt at your age." I tried to ignore her. I told myself to keep the peace for Michael's sake. I went about my daily routines, watering the garden, baking pies, knitting in the evenings. But inside, I was restless. I couldn't shake the image of her hand slapping me, or the way she had demanded the keys like she already owned everything. And then came a quieter, less extreme event, one that seemed small at first, but carried a message I couldn't ignore. It was a Sunday afternoon. After church, I stopped by the local bakery to buy a loaf of fresh bread. As I walked in, I saw Mrs. Patterson, my neighbor from across the street. She gave me a warm smile, but then her eyes lingered on my face. "Linda," she said gently, "are you okay? Your cheek, it looks a little bruised." I touched my face, where the slap had left its faint mark. I hadn't realized it was still visible. "Oh, it's nothing. Just a little accident at home." Her smile faded. "If you ever need anything, dear, anything at all, you come to me. Don't keep things bottled up." Her kindness nearly broke me. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I swallowed them back and nodded. "Thank you, Margaret. That means more than you know." On the way home, her words kept echoing in my mind. Don't keep things bottled up. Was that what I was doing? Trying to protect Michael by staying silent, when in reality I was letting Jessica gain more and more control. I knew I couldn't stay quiet forever. That night, as I sat in bed reading, I heard footsteps in the hallway. The floor creaked, and I peeked through the crack in the door. It was Jessica. She was sneaking toward the living room, carrying something in her hands. Curiosity got the better of me. I waited a moment, then slipped out of bed and followed her softly. From the shadows of the hallway, I watched as she opened my desk drawer, the one where I kept important papers. My heart stopped. She was rifling through them. Birth certificates, bank documents, even the deed to the house. She pulled it out, held it in her hands, and smiled, a cold, satisfied smile that made my blood run cold. I gasped before I could stop myself. Her head snapped up, and our eyes locked. For a split second, neither of us moved. Then she shoved the papers back in, slammed the drawer shut, and stormed toward me. "What are you doing spying on me?" she hissed, her face inches from mine. "This is my house," I whispered, my voice shaking but firm. "I have every right to know what you're doing in my things." Her lips curled into a sneer. "Not for long." And then she grabbed my wrist so tightly I winced in pain. "You better stay out of my way, Linda," she said, her voice low and dangerous, "or you're going to regret it." At that moment, I knew this wasn't just tension between two women in a family. This was war. Her grip on my wrist tightened, her nails digging into my skin. I wanted to pull away, to scream, but I was frozen in place, staring into eyes that no longer belonged to the polite young woman I once welcomed into my home. Jessica's voice was low, steady, almost chilling. "You think this is your house, but you're wrong. Michael and I, we're the future. You're the past. And sooner or later, you're going to have to let go." With that, she shoved my wrist away and stormed off toward the bedroom she shared with my son. The sound of the door slamming made the walls shake. I stood there in the hallway, my knees trembling, so badly I had to lean against the wall to steady myself. My heart was racing, and my mind kept repeating her words like a broken record. "You're the past. This isn't your house anymore." For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at the drawer where my documents were kept. Slowly, I opened it, checking the papers. Everything seemed to still be there, the deed, the will, Richard's old files. But the thought of her hands touching them, the way she had smiled when she held the deed, it was a warning. That was the extreme moment that night. But what came after was quieter, almost deceptively so. The next morning, Jessica was in the kitchen, humming softly as she made pancakes. Michael sat at the table, sipping coffee, unaware of what had happened just hours before. "Good morning, Linda," Jessica greeted cheerfully, as if nothing had happened. "I made your favorite, blueberry pancakes. Want some?" I forced a smile, though inside I was still shaking. "Thank you," I said softly, sitting at the far end of the table. Michael glanced at me. "Mom, are you okay? You look tired." I hesitated, then nodded. "Just didn't sleep well, that's all." Jessica set a plate in front of me, her smile as sweet as sugar. But her eyes were sharp, mocking. She knew I wasn't going to tell him. Not yet, and that gave her power. For the rest of that week, I tried to keep the peace. I cooked dinner, tended the garden, and avoided confrontations. Jessica seemed to play along, acting like the perfect daughter-in-law when Michael was around. She complimented my cooking, helped me with chores, even suggested we watch movies together as a family. But when Michael wasn't around, her mask slipped. She left messes for me to clean, criticized everything I did, and gave me cold stares that sent chills down my spine. I began to feel like a stranger in my own home. One evening, as I sat on the porch swing, I thought about Richard. He had always told me that kindness was strength, not weakness. You can't control how others treat you, he would say, but you can control how you respond. I clung to those words like a lifeline. Maybe if I showed Jessica more kindness, more patience, she would soften. Maybe she was struggling in her own way and lashing out because she felt insecure. I decided, against my better judgment, to try. The next day, I baked her favorite dessert, chocolate chip cookies. I placed them on a plate, warm and fresh from the oven, and carried them to her room. I knocked softly. "Jessica, I made something for you." The door opened a crack, and she peered out. Her eyes narrowed, suspicious. "What do you want?" I held out the plate. "Cookies. I thought you might like some." For a moment, she looked at me like I was playing some kind of trick. Then she smiled and took the plate. "Thanks," she said flatly, before closing the door in my face. I stood there, staring at the closed door, my heart sinking. But I reminded myself, kindness is never wasted, even if it isn't returned. That was the low point. Quiet, heavy, full of doubt. But the storm wasn't over. In fact, it was about to get much worse. It was late on Friday night when I woke to the sound of voices. At first, I thought it was the TV. But as I listened, I realized the voices were coming from the living room. Slowly, I slipped out of bed and crept down the hallway. I recognized Jessica's voice. She was on the phone. "Yes, I told you. It's almost done," she whispered sharply. "The papers are here. I just need her to sign one thing, and then the house will be ours. Don't worry, I'll handle it. Michael won't suspect a thing." My blood ran cold. She wasn't just talking. She had a plan. A plan to take everything from me. I stumbled back into my room, my hands shaking. How could she do this? How could she plot against me under my own roof? That night, I barely slept. My mind kept racing, torn between fear and anger. Should I confront her? Should I tell Michael? Or should I keep quiet, gather proof, and wait for the right moment? The next morning, I tried to act normal. I made breakfast, watered the flowers, and pretended nothing was wrong. But inside, I was boiling. Later that day, I decided to look through my desk again. I opened the drawer carefully, checking the papers. At first, everything looked normal. But then I noticed something new, an extra document slipped between the others. My hands trembled as I pulled it out. It was a legal-looking paper, typed neatly, with blank spaces where a signature should go. At the top, in bold letters, it read, "Transfer of property ownership." My heart nearly stopped. She was planning to trick me into signing my house over to her. And then, just as I was holding that paper, Jessica walked in. She froze in the doorway, her eyes locking onto the paper in my hands. For a moment, we just stared at each other, her face twisted with rage. "What are you doing?" she hissed, stepping into the room. I clutched the paper to my chest. This is my house, Jessica. You will not take it from me." She lunged forward, grabbing for the paper. I stumbled back, my heart pounding, clutching it tighter. "Give it to me," she screamed, her voice filled with fury. And that was the next extreme event. The moment she tried to rip the very deed to my home from my hands, that Jessica's fingers clawed at the paper in my hands like a wild animal fighting for prey. I stumbled backward, bumping into the edge of my dresser, clutching the document to my chest with all my strength. "This is mine," she screamed, her voice sharp and unrecognizable. "Give it to me, you old witch." Her words cut deep, not just the insult, but the venom behind them. My daughter-in-law, the woman I had welcomed into my home, the woman I had cooked for, supported, and cared about, now looked at me as if I were her enemy. "No!" I shouted, my voice shaking but firm. "This is my house. You cannot take it from me." For a moment, we struggled, her pulling, me resisting. Then suddenly, footsteps pounded up the hallway. Michael appeared in the doorway, his face pale with shock. What's going on here? He demanded, his eyes darting between us. Jessica instantly dropped her hands and stepped back, her breathing heavy but her face shifting into an innocent mask. Michael, she gasped, tears welling in her eyes. Your mom, she's accusing me again. She found some old paper and thinks I'm trying to take the house. She's paranoid, Michael. I was just trying to calm her down. I stared at her, stunned by how quickly she could twist the truth. My chest heaved, and I wanted to scream the truth, to tell him everything I'd overheard, everything I'd seen. But my voice caught in my throat. Michael looked at me, confusion and worry etched on his face. Mom, what paper? I slowly held it out, my hands trembling. Look, I whispered. This isn't mine. She put it here. It's a transfer of ownership. She wants me to sign this house over to her. Jessica gasped dramatically, clutching her chest. That's not true. I found that online when I was looking into how we could maybe buy our own place someday. I must have left it in there by accident. I wasn't hiding anything. Her lie was so smooth it made my stomach turn. Michael rubbed his temples, his voice weary. This has to stop. Both of you. I can't take this constant fighting. He turned to me. Mom, maybe you're reading too much into this. Maybe it really was just an accident. Tay stung my eyes. Michael, I whispered. Please, you have to believe me. He didn't answer. Instead, he walked out of the room, leaving Jessica and me standing there in silence. Her lips curled into a small, satisfied smile as she whispered, Nice try, Linda. But he'll never believe you. That was the extreme event at the start, the confrontation over the paper. The next few days were quieter, at least on the surface. Jessica acted as though nothing had happened, humming while she did chores, smiling at Michael, even baking cookies for him as if she were the perfect wife. To anyone else, it would have looked like peace had returned. But underneath, tension simmered like a pot ready to boil over. Every glance she gave me, every word she spoke when Michael wasn't around, carried hidden daggers that I began spending more time outside the house. I would walk to the park, sit on the bench under the old oak tree, and watch children play while their parents laughed nearby. Sometimes I'd see young mothers holding their babies, and I'd think about when Michael was little. Back then, life was simpler. Back then, my home was full of love, not suspicion and fear. One afternoon, as I sat there, Margaret, the neighbor who had noticed my bruise, joined me. She handed me a thermos of tea and sat down quietly. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to, she said gently. But I can tell something's wrong at home. I swallowed hard, staring at the children playing. I don't want to burden anyone with my problems, I whispered. She touched my hand. Linda, that's what friends are for. You've always been so kind to everyone in this neighborhood. Always baking pies, helping with church events, looking after people when they are sick. Don't think for a second that you have to suffer in silence. You deserve kindness too. Her words broke something inside me. I felt tears slide down my cheeks, but for the first time in weeks, they weren't tears of fear, they were tears of release. That was the low moment, quiet, reflective, heavy with the weight of silence. But kindness has a way of lighting even the darkest paths. Margaret's words gave me strength. That night, as I lay in bed, I told myself I wouldn't give up. I wouldn't let Jessica take everything from me. And yet, the storm was far from over. It was a Wednesday evening when the next extreme event struck. Michael had left for a late shift at work, and I was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner. Jessica came in, her heels clicking on the tile floor. You think you're clever, don't you? She hissed, leaning close. Running to the neighbors, making yourself look like some poor victim. Do you think anyone's going to believe you over me? Michael doesn't even believe you. I set down the dish I was holding, my hand shaking. Jessica, I don't want to fight with you. I just want peace. She laughed, a cold, cruel laugh. Peace! There's no peace until you're gone. And if you don't give me those keys soon, I'll make sure you regret it in ways you can't even imagine. Her voice dropped to a whisper, her breath hot against my ear. Accidents happen all the time, Linda. You're old. People will believe it was just a fall down the stairs or a little kitchen fire. Think about that the next time you decide to cross me. My blood turned to ice. For the first time, I realized she wasn't just trying to manipulate me, she was threatening my life. That was the next extreme event. The moment when fear turned into sheer terror. I don't know if I screamed or if my voice broke into a soundless cry, but the image of Emily lying there, limp and pale against the cold kitchen floor, has burned itself into my mind like a scar. For a moment, everything in the world froze. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the old wall clock, even the faint traffic noise from outside, all of it seemed to stop, leaving only silence and the weight of what I was seeing. I dropped to my knees, so fast I thought my bones might shatter. My hands shook violently as I reached for her wrist, desperately searching for a pulse. Please, God, not this. Not like this. My fingers trembled until finally, faint and uneven, I felt the beat of life under her skin. Relief and terror hit me all at once. She was alive, but barely. Emily! Emily, open your eyes. Stay with me, I begged, patting her cheek gently, my tears spilling onto her lifeless face. But she didn't stir. I scrambled for my phone on the counter, my clumsy fingers barely able to dial 911. My voice cracked when the operator answered. My daughter-in-law, she collapsed. She's not waking up. Please, send someone. Please hurry. The operator's calm instructions cut through my panic like a thread of clarity. Stay on the line. Is she breathing? Yes, but it's shallow. I cried. Keep her on her side if she vomits. Help is on the way. Stay with her. The minutes felt like hours. I knelt by Emily, brushing her hair back, whispering words she couldn't hear. You're not alone. You're not going anywhere. Not today, Emily. Not while I'm here. At last, the wail of sirens shattered the night. 2 paramedics rushed in, carrying their gear, their presence a lifeline in my spiraling storm. They checked her vitals, lifted her carefully onto the stretcher, and rushed her toward the ambulance. I followed, my hands trembling, my body heavy with fear. The hospital lights were harsh, too bright, too clean. They made me feel like a criminal waiting for a sentence. I sat in the emergency room's hard plastic chair, wringing my hands, watching the door she'd been wheeled through. Every second was torture. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a doctor emerged. His expression was calm, professional, but I saw something heavy behind his eyes. She had a panic attack combined with severe exhaustion, he explained. Her body essentially shut down from stress. Physically, she's stable now, but emotionally, she's at a breaking point. I let out a sob I'd been holding in since the moment she collapsed. Relief that she was alive washed over me, but guilt came hand in hand with it. My heart sank as I realized this wasn't just about me and her anymore. Something deeper was tearing her apart. When they finally let me into her room, Emily looked so small in that hospital bed. Her cheeks were pale, her lips dry, her eyes closed. I sat beside her, holding her limp hand, and whispered, I'm sorry. I should have seen how much you were hurting. I should have been kinder, more patient. I don't know what you're carrying, but I know now it's too heavy for you alone. And I promise you, no matter what, it won't crush you. Not while I'm here. As I sat there, a memory from years ago hit me like a flood. It was back when my husband, Henry, was still alive. We had just gone through the hardest winter of our lives. He'd been laid off from his job, and I was working double shifts at the diner just to keep food on the table. There was one night I came home so tired I could barely stand. I found Henry sitting at the kitchen table, his head in his hands, looking utterly defeated. I'd wanted to scream at him then, ask him why he couldn't do more, why I had to carry everything. But something stopped me. Instead, I knelt by him, wrapped my arms around his shoulders and whispered, We'll get through this. Together. And we did. That memory hit me with a painful clarity. Sometimes the only thing that saves someone is knowing they're not alone. Emily hadn't had that, maybe not ever. And I realized that perhaps her anger, her cruelty toward me, was not truly hatred. It was a mask for wounds I had never cared to look at before. The next morning, Emily woke up. Her eyes fluttered open, dazed, confused, and then landed on me. For a moment, fear crossed her face, like she expected me to scold her, maybe even abandon her. But I just squeezed her hand and whispered, You scared me half to death. Her lips quivered, but no words came. For the first time, I saw not the sharp, angry daughter-in-law who demanded my house keys, but a fragile young woman who had been carrying pain far beyond her years. And for a fleeting moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, things could change between us. But that hope was shattered when the hospital door opened and in walked Michael. His face was pale, his eyes wild with worry as he looked from Emily to me, then back to Emily. What happened? Emily burst into tears, hiding her face in her hands. Michael rushed to her side, wrapping his arms around her. I felt like an intruder in that moment, as though the bond they shared excluded me completely. But then Emily's next words froze my blood cold. She tried to take everything from me. She wants me gone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Michael turned to me, his face twisted in confusion and anger. Mom, what is she talking about? My mouth opened, but no words came out. Emily's trembling body, her tear-stained face, it painted me as the villain in a story I hadn't even known she was writing. And in that single moment, I realized I wasn't just fighting for peace anymore. I was fighting for the truth. The room went silent, heavy with tension, until the doctor returned to check on Emily. Michael pulled me aside, his voice sharp but low. Mom, if you're hiding something, you need to tell me now. My heart pounded. I wasn't hiding anything, but Emily's lie had already planted a poisonous seed. And I knew, deep in my bones, this was only the beginning. Michael's eyes burned into me, searching for something, truth, lies, maybe even guilt. But all I felt was a weight of betrayal pressing down on my chest. Emily sat in the hospital bed, clutching his hand as if I were a monster lurking in the shadows, ready to strike. Her tears had already done their work. Michael didn't need proof. He had always been the kind of man who listened with his heart before his head. And right now, his heart belonged to her. She's lying, I whispered, my voice trembling but steady enough to carry weight. Emily flinched, burying her face deeper into Michael's chest. You don't know what she's been doing to me. You don't know what it's like living with her. She wants me gone, Michael. She's been waiting for me to break so she can take everything for herself. Her words cut deeper than any slap ever could. I staggered back, shaking my head, unable to believe how easily she twisted the truth into something so ugly. I wanted to scream, to grab Michael by the shoulders and shout, Don't you see? Don't you know me? But I couldn't, because in his eyes, doubt was already there. Emily, Michael said softly, stroking her hair, you need to rest. Don't push yourself right now. I'll handle this. He looked up at me, his face hardening into something I didn't recognize. Mom, maybe it's time you went home. We'll talk later. I felt the floor tilt under me. I had been thrown out of my son's world by the one person who hated me most. The urge to defend myself screamed in my chest, but one glance at Emily's fragile form reminded me this wasn't about me. At least, not yet. So I left. The drive home was a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My chest ached with every breath, and the thought gnawed at me. He believed her. My own son believed her. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked different. It wasn't a home anymore. It was a battlefield. The silence inside felt hostile, every shadow a reminder of the war brewing within my own family. That night, I barely slept. Memories flooded back. Michael as a boy, running through the yard with scraped knees and wild laughter. The nights I stayed awake sewing his Halloween costumes. The mornings I skipped breakfast so he could have a bigger lunch. I thought all those years of love, sacrifice, and care would mean something. That they would protect me when the storms came. But I was wrong. And now, my daughter-in-law, the woman who slapped me and demanded my house keys, was pulling him away from me piece by piece. The next morning, the phone rang. My heart leapt, hoping it was Michael. But it was my neighbor, Linda. Sarah, honey, are you okay? I saw the ambulance last night. What happened? Her concern nearly broke me. Linda had lived next door for 20 years. She'd seen my life unfold, the good and the bad. I told her bits and pieces, just enough to explain why the ambulance came, but not enough to reveal the storm brewing inside my family. I didn't want to be the subject of pity or gossip. Linda's voice softened. You've always been the strongest woman I know. Don't let this tear you apart. Whatever's happening, remember, you're not alone. You've got people who care about you. Her words gave me a small comfort, a reminder that kindness still existed. But it was fleeting. Because later that day, Michael showed up at the house. He didn't even knock. He just walked in, his jaw set, his eyes cold. "Mom, we need to talk." I braced myself. "All right. Sit down." He didn't. He stood in the living room like a soldier delivering bad news. "Emily told me everything. She said you've been undermining her, making her feel unwelcome, trying to take control of the house. She even said you've been cruel." His voice cracked slightly, but he pushed on. "Is it true?" I felt my heart splinter. "Michael," I said, my voice steady but laced with pain, "you know me. You know I would never do that. Yes, we've argued. Yes, things have been hard. But cruel. No, that's not me. I've only ever wanted to protect you, this family, and this home." Michael ran a hand through his hair, torn between us. "I don't know who to believe anymore. Emily's been so broken lately, Mom. She almost died last night. And she swears it's because of you." Those words pierced me like a knife. Do you really think I'd want her hurt? Do you think I'd want to push her until she collapsed? My voice cracked. "She's your wife, Michael. I may not understand her. I may not agree with her. But I'd never wish harm on her. Never." He looked at me for a long moment, and for just a second, I thought he might see the truth. But then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, Emily's name, and his face softened. "I have to go," he said. "But, Mom, please. If there's even a chance you've been too harsh, think about it. Because if you can't live with Emily peacefully, I don't know how this is going to work." And just like that, he was gone. I sank onto the couch, the weight of his words pressing down like a boulder. If I couldn't find a way to survive under the same roof as Emily, I risked losing my son forever. The days that followed were quieter, but the silence was suffocating. Michael visited less, and when he did, it was always with Emily by his side. She avoided my gaze, but her smirk when Michael wasn't looking told me everything. She was winning. One evening, I baked Michael's favorite pie, apple cinnamon, just like I used to when he was little. I hoped the taste of home might remind him of the bond we once shared. When they came over, I set the pie on the table with a hopeful smile. "I made this for you, Michael." He smiled faintly, but before he could take a bite, Emily pushed the plate away. "Michael can't eat that," she said sharply. "Too much sugar. You know he's been trying to eat healthier. Why would you sabotage him like that?" Her accusation hung in the air like poison. Michael hesitated, then pushed the plate aside. "Thanks, Mom, but she's right. I need to be careful." My heart sank as Emily's smirk grew. She had turned even my love into a weapon against me. But that wasn't the worst of it. 2 nights later, I woke to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. My heart pounded as I grabbed the flashlight and crept out of bed, and there, standing in the living room, was Emily. She was holding a set of papers in her hand, papers I instantly recognized. My house deed. She looked up, her eyes glinting in the beam of the flashlight. "This house should have been ours from the beginning. But don't worry, Sarah. Soon, it will be." Before I could respond, she slipped past me and stormed out the front door, and in that moment, I realized, the slap, the lies, the collapse, none of it was random. Emily had a plan. And I was standing directly in her way. The night air was heavy with silence after Emily stormed out with my house deed clutched tightly in her hand. My chest heaved, my legs weak beneath me, as if the floor itself was about to crumble. For a moment, I just stood there, the beam of my flashlight trembling in the empty room. The house that had been my refuge, the place where I had raised Michael, where Henry and I had built our life, it suddenly felt like a battlefield being stripped away from me piece by piece. The papers were not just papers. They were the soul of my life, the very ground beneath my feet. And now Emily had them. I wanted to run after her, scream at her, grab back what was mine. But my body wouldn't move. My fear rooted me to the spot, while my heart pounded against my ribs like a caged bird desperate to escape. Finally, I forced myself to the door and looked outside. The street was empty, dark except for the pale glow of a flickering lamppost. Emily was gone. My deed was gone. I leaned against the doorframe, my breath shaky, my mind racing. What was she planning? Why take the deed? And more importantly, what would Michael believe when she told him her version of events? I knew then that Emily wasn't just angry or insecure. She was calculating. She had been playing a long game, twisting words, planting seeds of doubt, turning my own son against me. And now, she had escalated to stealing the very foundation of my life. But what could I do? The next morning, I called my lawyer, Mr. Henderson, a kind older man who had handled my affairs since Henry passed. I explained what had happened, every detail trembling out of me like a confession. He was silent for a moment before sighing. Sarah, legally, she can't do anything with the deed unless you signed it over. But the fact that she took it, it's troubling. Very troubling. Troubling, I repeated, almost laughing bitterly. She wants me gone, Mr. Henderson. She wants my home, my life. She won't stop until she has it. I understand, he said gently. But remember, the law is on your side. Still be careful. If she's willing to go this far, she might try more dangerous things. His words chilled me. More dangerous things. What could be worse than this? That evening, Michael came by. His face was tense, his jaw tight, as if he had already chosen sides before stepping through the door. Mom, he said, his voice clipped. Emily told me you accused her of stealing something last night. I stared at him, stunned. Accused her? Michael, I saw her. She had the deed in her hands. His eyes narrowed. She said you were confused, that you've been under a lot of stress lately. Maybe even imagining things. Imagining things? My voice cracked. Michael, do you think I don't know the difference between reality and imagination? Do you think I don't recognize my own house deed when I see it? But the doubt was there, plain in his face. Emily had already gotten to him. He rubbed his temples, exhausted. Mom, please. I just want peace. Can you at least try to get along with her? For me. The plea in his voice broke my heart. He wasn't just my son anymore. He was a man torn between two women he loved. But one of them was tearing us apart, and he couldn't see it. I nodded slowly, though the words tasted like ash. For you, Michael, I'll try. But please, open your eyes before it's too late. He left not long after, leaving me in silence once again. For a few days, things seemed calmer. Emily didn't come by, and Michael only called instead of visiting. I tried to cling to small comforts, gardening, baking, even walking around the neighborhood. Linda stopped by with cookies one afternoon, giving me a hug that nearly broke me into tears. You're stronger than you think, Sarah, she told me kindly. Don't let anyone take that from you. Her words stayed with me, a reminder that kindness was still out there, even if my own family seemed poisoned by lies. But the calm didn't last. It never did. One evening, I returned home from the grocery store and noticed something strange. The front door was unlocked. I knew I had locked it before leaving, I always did. My stomach dropped. I pushed the door open cautiously, my grocery bags trembling in my hands. At first, nothing seemed out of place. But then I saw it. A small envelope sitting neatly on the kitchen table, my name scrawled across it in a handwriting I recognized all too well. Emily's. With shaking fingers, I opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper. It read, "You don't belong here anymore. Pack your things. If you don't leave willingly, you'll regret it." No signature. No explanation. Just a threat, cold and sharp, sitting in the heart of my home. The grocery bag slipped from my hands, cans rolling across the floor. My knees buckled as I sank into a chair, the note trembling in my grip. Emily had moved from lies and manipulation to outright threats. She wasn't just trying to win Michael's heart. She was trying to drive me out of my life completely. And I knew in that moment that the real war had only just begun. The note trembled in my hands long after I'd read it. I must have read those words 100 times that night, my eyes scanning over them until the ink blurred. You don't belong here anymore. Pack your things. If you don't leave willingly, you'll regret it. It was one thing for Emily to slap me, to demand my keys, to twist Michael against me. But this was different. This was no longer hidden manipulation. It was a direct threat, a declaration of war. My first instinct was to call Michael, to show him the letter and beg him to believe me. But then a sick thought settled in my chest. What if he doesn't believe me? What if she planted this just to make me look delusional? She'd already convinced him I was imagining things about the deed. If I came running with this note, she could easily say, "See? She's paranoid. She's inventing stories to make me look bad." So instead, I locked the note in my dresser drawer and sat alone in the dark, the weight of fear pressing down on me. Every creak of the house made me jump. Every shadow felt like her watching me, waiting for the moment to strike again. By morning, I was exhausted. My eyes burned, my body heavy. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, the woman looking back at me a stranger, tired, worn, almost broken. I thought of Henry. He would have told me to stand tall, to fight back. "Sarah," he used to say, "you've got more steel in you than you realize." But even steel can bend when the fire is hot enough. That afternoon, Linda stopped by again. She noticed my puffy eyes, the slump in my shoulders. "You're not okay," she said gently. I tried to brush it off, but she pressed. Finally, I broke and showed her the note. Her eyes widened as she read it. "Sarah, this is serious. You can't just keep this to yourself. You need to tell Michael. Or even the police." "I can't," I whispered. "If Michael doesn't believe me, it'll push him further away. And the police, what will they do? It's just words on paper." Linda grabbed my hand. "It's more than words. It's intimidation. And it's not right. Please promise me you won't let her scare you out of your own home." Her firmness gave me a flicker of strength. "I promise," I said, though inside, I wasn't sure I could keep that promise. For the next few days, things were strangely quiet. Michael called once to check in, his tone distant, as though he were speaking to a stranger. Emily's name hovered in the background of every word, even if he didn't say it. The silence should have been comforting, but instead it gnawed at me. I felt like I was standing in the eye of a storm, waiting for the winds to hit again. And I was right. One evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find a man in a suit, holding a folder. "Mrs. Reynolds?" he asked. "Yes," I said cautiously. He handed me the folder. "You've been served." Confused, I opened it. My eyes darted over the words, my breath catching in my throat. It was a legal notice. Emily, on Michael's behalf, was filing for power of attorney over me, citing concerns about my mental stability. After that, I felt lighter, stronger, because setting boundaries wasn't about punishment, it was about protection. Protection for me. Protection for my twins. I focused on building a new kind of family. Friends who showed up. Neighbors who cared. A community of parents who understood struggle. My kids grew surrounded by love, even if it wasn't from their grandparents. The word burden stopped haunting me. Instead, I saw it for what it was, a reflection of my parents' weakness, not mine. And slowly, the pain turned into something else. Strength, if there's one thing I learned, it's this. Sometimes the family we're born into is not the family we can depend on. And that's okay, because we can build our own. My parents may never change. They may never admit what they did. But I have my truth, my strength, and my twins. And we're doing just fine. Better than fine. We're thriving. If you've made it this far, it means the story really connected with you. Many of you watch these stories again and again, but still haven't subscribed. It's free, and it helps me keep bringing you more stories like this. So hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to cut off toxic family to protect your peace? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I nearly dropped the papers. This is to be a mistake. But the man just nodded politely and left, leaving me on the porch with shaking hands and a heart that felt like it was splintering. Mental stability. She was painting me as unfit, unstable, maybe even incapable of living on my own. If this went through, they could control everything. My finances, my house, my life. I stumbled back inside, collapsing onto the couch. My chest tightened as the realization hit me. This was her plan all along. The slaps, the lies, the manipulation, it was all building to this. She wasn't just trying to win Michael. She was trying to erase me. I thought of calling Michael, screaming at him, begging him to see the truth. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed proof. Evidence. Something undeniable. So I called Mr. Henderson again. When I explained, his voice was grim. "Sarah, these kinds of cases can get ugly. But don't panic. As long as you can prove you of sound mind, they don't have a leg to stand on." "But Emily's convincing, Mr. Henderson. She's already turned Michael against me. What if she convinces a judge too? Then we fight, he said firmly. You're not alone in this. For the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe I wasn't as powerless as Emily wanted me to believe. But that hope was short-lived. 2 nights later, I woke to a loud crash. My heart leapt into my throat. I grabbed my flashlight and rushed to the kitchen. The window was shattered. Glass glittered across the floor like tiny shards of ice. And on the table, in the exact same spot as before, was another envelope. With trembling hands, I opened it. This one was shorter. Just 4 words. Time is running out. When I thought about everything that had happened, I realized something important. My parents were never going to change. No matter how much I wanted them to care, no matter how many chances I gave, they would always see me as a burden. That word still rang in my head like a bell I couldn't stop hearing. Burden. They had thrown it at me so carelessly, and yet it was heavy enough to crush years of love and trust. But I wasn't crushed. Not anymore. I had my twins, my surgery scars, my strength, and my determination. And I had something else. People around me who had stepped up when my own family refused to. This chapter of my life wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about rising above. One morning, about 3 weeks after my parents' betrayal and the whole concert fiasco, I got an email from a local parenting group. They wanted me to speak at their next meeting. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Me? Speak? I had no background in public speaking. But they told me they had heard my story, how I had handled surgery, twins, betrayal, and rebuilding my life, and they thought other single parents could find strength in it. I almost deleted the email. Who was I to inspire anyone? But then I thought about all those nights crying, wondering how I would make it. I thought about the neighbors who had come through, the friend who had babysat, and even strangers online who had reached out when I shared pieces of my story. Maybe sharing could help someone else. So I said yes. When the day came, I was shaking the whole drive there. My twins were with a babysitter, and I had on the nicest outfit I could put together. My palms were sweaty, and I kept practicing what to say. When I walked into the room, I saw about 40 people sitting in folding chairs. Some were parents with babies in strollers. Some looked tired, like they hadn't slept in days. Some looked nervous, just like me. The organizer introduced me. This is someone who knows firsthand how hard parenting can get when support disappears. She's here to remind us all that strength is possible, even when we're alone. I stepped up to the microphone. My voice shook at first, but then I saw one mom rocking a baby while another kid tugged on her sleeve. I saw a dad with his head in his hands. And suddenly, I wasn't nervous. I just spoke. I told them about my surgery, about asking my parents for help, about them calling me a burden and going to a concert instead. I told them about being stuck in bed, unable to move, terrified for my twins. I told them about the people who showed up when my parents didn't. I told them about strength. When I finished, there was silence. And then, applause. Not polite clapping, but real applause, the kind that makes your chest feel full. People came up after to hug me, thank me, and share their own stories. For the first time, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt like a survivor. That night, when I got home, I found a letter in the mail. My parents' handwriting. My stomach sank. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a 3-page letter. They said they had acted in the heat of the moment, and that they were sorry if their words hurt. They claimed they were overwhelmed and needed a break. They wrote about how they loved me and the twins but didn't know how to show it. But here's the thing, they never admitted to abandoning me during surgery. They never acknowledged going to the concert. They danced around the truth, covering it with excuses and half apologies. For years, I might have clung to those scraps. But not anymore. I folded the letter neatly, put it back in the envelope, and tucked it away in a drawer. I didn't respond. Because real apologies aren't written to save face. They live through action. That a few weeks later, my twins turned 3. It wasn't a huge party, just balloons, cupcakes, and a few friends. We played music, sang, and laughed. For a moment, life felt normal. Halfway through the party, my friend pulled me aside. "You know," she said, "you're doing amazing. Not just surviving, but giving these kids joy. Don't ever doubt that. Her words stuck with me. My parents had made me doubt myself, but moments like this proved I was enough. More than enough. About 2 months after the birthday, my parents showed up at my door. Unannounced. They stood there with nervous smiles, holding a big wrapped box. "Can we come in?" my mom asked. I hesitated. My twins were in the living room playing. Part of me wanted to slam the door, but another part of me thought maybe, just maybe, they had changed. They gave the twins the box, a huge set of toys. The kids squealed with joy, tearing into it. My parents watched, smiling, and for a moment, I saw the grandparents they could be. Then my dad said it. "See, we're not so bad after all. You made such a big deal out of everything." There it was. The denial. The lack of accountability. My stomach dropped. I stood up, heart pounding. You don't get to rewrite what happened. You don't get to call me a burden, abandon me, and then pretend toys fix it. My mom started crying. My dad got defensive. We were stressed. Everyone makes mistakes. I shook my head. Mistakes are forgetting a birthday card. Mistakes are being late. What you did was abandonment. What you did was betrayal. My twins looked confused, sensing the tension. I walked over, picked them up, and said firmly, "You're not welcome here until you can admit what you did. And mean it." I opened the door and waited. Slowly, my parents shuffled out. My mom whispered, "We just wanted to be part of their lives." I answered, "Then you should have thought of that when I needed you most." And I closed the door,